Hey there, all things MSP crew. We are back again for another, well, we call these vendor updates. And this one technically, I guess, is tied to a vendor, but we're really going to talk about IT Nation and specifically PitchIT. And of course, there is no better person to talk about that than the amazing Sean Lardo. Sean, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Eric. I don't know I've ever been called the amazing, but I feel like I should have take my hat off and pull a rabbit out. I don't know. But I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, that would help.
Make me amazing, actually.
Oh, I'm doing great. Still publishing videos from IT Nation Connect 2024 because we did so many great interviews during the show that, because you put us in that great location. It was just perfect. We knew, we thought we were going to have some sound consideration issues there. But you know what? Honestly, with a little bit of tweaking on the post-production side, they turned out great.
Honestly, it was great. First off, I was so pleased to have all you guys there because it's about time, right? There's so many stories, there's so much stuff happening, and there's no way any one conference group can capture all of the things, right? It's impossible. And it's nice to be able to have all of you involved and at your flavor of how you guys interview. It just changes everything. So, and plus you're all my friends, so it's even better. So I invite my friends to an event and you guys all hang out, which is even better. So thank you for the time you gave us. Thank you for creating really good content. And thank you for being a big supporter.
Yeah, I will say that because it was so organized this year, and it's really not been disorganized previously, it's just gotten better this year. We were doing so many interviews that we didn't have time to socialize.
Well, I feel like the interview is socializing.
It is. And I will say the other cool thing that happened is that we were able to interview a lot more MSPs rather than just vendors this year because we had more time slots available. And that really worked out.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like the story of the ecosystem and the community and in general, when you look across the board, is several tiers of conversation, right? You have the vendors, you have the partners, but it's not just, but those are just organizational conversations, right? It's the different positions and personas of people that are involved in this. There's so many moving parts and the industry just hasn't stopped growing. So it's only going to get, I don't want to say more crowded, but more complex, and so we have so many things that we can work on. And again, you saw the transition of MSPs over the last 10 years and the big push from 15 years ago, even though from break fix to MSP to MSSPs and whatever else they're going to be, and bars coming into the show. And then you see them from print companies that sold print and whatnot turn into MSPs. There's just so many moving parts of so many things that, and getting them to understand the space and working better and more diligently and connected the dots. I feel like that's what you guys are able to do. You're able to help broadcast our story, what IT Nation does.
Well, and by having the variety that you do, it really creates a lot of different opportunities to tell the stories in different ways that might resonate with different people.
Agreed. And that's that persona piece, right? You're from small town, Mississippi, and you might have a certain way of doing business, and you may be a 5-person MSP. You're obviously running much differently than downtown Manhattan with a 75-person MSP or 150 MSP but there's still the same needs and requirements, just at different levels, different scales, different operational maturity, which has become a huge conversation piece, by the way, is that whole operational maturity piece. That also applies to the vendors from startup to where they become not startup anymore, but they're more SMB to mid-market to enterprise, right? And there's a maturity conversation there that takes place on a regular basis as well.
Yeah, maturity, I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it because it has a little bit of a negative connotation, but there is absolutely an evolution from a startup to a more mature vendor. I mean, it's just the best word to use to describe it. And same thing with an MSP. An MSP goes through a
Hmm.
startup period, it goes through a growth period, goes through a lot of different transitions and inflection points in there where it evolves as a company. All companies do this. And maturity really matters. And of course, one of the things that really helps with maturity is with the vendors in particular is getting them in a program that helps them get
That's
kind
brilliant.
of I know. You knew
I
where I was
didn't
going with
until you
this.
did it. That was really
Uh,
good. I'm going to shut up now.
Gets them into this I don't know, understanding of how different the MSP industry is. And of course, I'm talking about PitchIT. PitchIT is always to me a highlight of the year. And I was able to participate this year by doing the Pitch is
I
Right
loved it.
game show, and had a blast with that. What is your impression of 2024 Pitch It versus 2023 Pitch It?
So, just like the whole maturity conversation we were just having in general, this program has matured year over year over year, right? And because of the exposure from guys like you and Marv and Ray and all those guys too, the vendors that apply the following year have had a chance to watch the last year's and see how they operate and how they conduct business. So on one front, we're literally we're setting a standard publicly for people to see how they operate and what they do. Um, Internally, though, the way we approach the whole thing, we become the program has matured. We've gotten fundamentally better at everything from the operationally speaking side of setting up and scheduling their events to how we train them, develop them, do ongoing training, exposure of whatever. Because I can tell you right now, from my history of working in this industry with a lot of startup vendors, I would walk in not knowing what yet. It's hard to find a true north when you're not even sure where you're physically located sometimes in the industry, right? And there's so many complexities to that as well. So if you notice from 2023 to 2024, even um, the vendors that were competing in this, they became more the way they presented themselves has become better. The coaching has become better because we're using the finalists of the year prior to be coaches for head coaches to help them. They're part of the cameo coaching now. So you're seeing a more refined messaging going on. You're seeing a way that they present themselves. It's elevated year over year because of it, and also globally, you start seeing more exposure. We had 6 vendors in last year between the APAC region and the EMEA region. And it's gotten far more popular. As a matter of fact, if you looked at IT Nation over in Sydney last year, we had a bunch of them that sponsored that never would have sponsored before, but they were able to find value because they had critical mass and people wanted to see them. And so they actually collaborated and did a thing together, and they were like one of the highlights of the show. It was great to see. So so the coaching's gotten better, the contestants have gotten better. Not to take anything away from the years prior because they were really great, and honestly, they were trailblazing this with me. The first year I started running this, I mean, God bless them, man, because they helped me so much, and they did so much, and they were great. It's just that now the exposure's gotten bigger and the stakes got higher publicly because people are paying attention. So it's like you got to show up.
Yeah, and I think that it's great on a lot of different levels because number one, like I said before, it introduces vendors from either who don't have experience in the space or don't have any experience at
Yes.
all doing this. This may be their first startup. And it really helps them through a lot of those different things that they either need to A, understand about being a startup,
Mm-hmm.
period, or B, understand what makes the MSP side of this industry so unique and so
Sure.
different. Now, in addition to that, it's also great to be able to introduce these vendors to the larger MSP
Absolutely.
community. And I think the MSP community in general, uh, really does get something from this because it allows them not only to see some new and emerging vendors, but also see that these are vendors who are actually trying to engage the MSP community in the
Mm-hmm.
right way.
Agreed. I'll even go one step further too. We've now hit, over the years, 60% of these vendors were currently MSPs. Okay. So I never thought about it as much as I have now because it wasn't just front and center to me. But the transition for those men and women that were MSPs and trying to be vendors, they think they're in the same old, and they have to learn how to be a vendor now. We make the joke of you're going to the dark side, right? But like, I'll give you an example. One of them, they had MSP for 15 plus years. The vendor, their vendor offer was born out of Evolve. Okay. So they literally were in meetings in Evolve because they were part of Evolve, and they're talking about like, look how we do things as they always do with their peer meetings. Right. And other partners like, well, if you would, do you have this as a technology, as a platform? And they're like, yeah, well, we would be happy to use it too. And they were giving it to them for free, right? Which is what Evolve does. They work, those partners work well together. So they gave it to them, and they started to create interest from other partners. But what ended up happening though, when you enter into the game of this vendor world, they start, and the exact conversation I had with this gentleman a year later, he said, I realized as I started going to shows, my friends started treating me different. They expected me to buy the drinks. And I'm like,
Yep.
welcome to being a vendor. Like, there is an etiquette that takes place from customer to provider. And that's all there is to it. And they're all learning it. And so I had to start to educate them on like, you can't just keep coming to shows as an MSP anymore. If you're going to talk about your vendor product, you have to start being a vendor. You'll lose credibility. You can't, even if you have the greatest product or the greatest offering, the greatest service delivery, it doesn't matter. If you don't, there's a level of expectation and etiquette that exists that they have to understand how to do. And then to add one more thing to that is what they started to realize too as they went through the process, that MSP startups and vendor startups have the same problems, the same obstacles.
Well, because they are generally just business problems. They're not
Right.
specific to our industry. And it's one of the interesting things about our industry is that so many people who are not business people get
Yes.
into this. And that's one of the things that makes it
Yep.
unique. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is there anything coming up for Pitch It in 2025 that's going to be new, different,
So,
whatever?
a couple of things that are taking place. As I mentioned about the global experience that's taking place, I'm actually going to be going to IT Nation Europe in March, and I will be representing our Pitch It people there that we have sponsoring over there. We will be having the goal is to get boots on ground in these regions now to start to help these guys, these men and women, grow in the industry. It's less about the pitch competition, but it's more about the ongoing support of the vendors that are in this program before, during, and after their involvement, to help them to continuously grow now. Because the goal for us, Pitch It is great. It's a competition. It's fun. It really is. And the amount of exposure and the amount of things we've seen has been phenomenal. The sheer numbers, if you remember, it was nobody really knew about it 4 years ago. Now we have it to where we have anywhere from 6 to 7, 800 people in a room watching these finals happen. Not to mention, we did the estimate. We put together all the data from just what we put out through socials and whatnot, and we had over a million impressions on all the posts that took place. And then the amount of people that watched the live streams, the amount of people that actually went onto the channel program to watch the preliminaries. We had so much exposure. I wish I had I don't have the stats here, and I wish I did, but we were looking at just the open rate on emails for it. It was so ridiculous. So this has grown 20-fold at this point from 2 years ago, even. And so, but with all that said, it's really about these vendors having staying power in the industry, in our community, so the MSPs reap the benefit of not a one-hit wonder, but when they're putting together their stack and they're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, they're investing in the right vendors for their own longevity and scalability.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody else earlier today about how much more relationship matters in this business in terms of longevity. And with the vendors, see, MSPs have grown up in this industry where once you get a client, it's very rare that you lose
Right.
one. As long as you're doing an okay job, you don't even have to be doing a great job. As long as you're doing an okay job, it's very painful for a client to leave
Agreed.
you. and find another IT guy and build that
It's
trust
never worth anything
relationship
more than that. I
again.
agree.
So,
People will lose clients or lose business when it's just the worst possible situation took place. The worst of worst, whatever it
right.
is, right? And otherwise, the only other time you lose a client is if they were acquired and went somewhere else or they went out of business.
Yep, for sure. In fact, in the 7 years that I had my MSP, which was after the 10 years I had my break fix, that's literally the only time I lost customers was when they were acquired by somebody else, and that larger company already had either an internal IT department, which a lot of times we would then start co-managing with, or it was, a situation where they already had an MSP and they weren't going to
Right.
have two. So, but the interesting thing is that with the vendors, it's not the same. Vendors have to work harder at maintaining those relationships so that they get the 7 to 10 year lifetime
Absolutely.
value out of an MSP.
Absolutely. Think about this. MSPs and small businesses like that are local. And in some cases, you're literally walking down the street to see all of your clients. You're at the same bar
Hmm.
or pub. You're involved in the same chamber of commerce. You're involved in the same Rotary Club, whatever it is. You're involved in those with them. You're doing the same fundraising stuff, the same, your kids go to school together. Those are all connecting pieces for them. Whereas when you're a vendor, you're working, even if you're just North America, is you, it's a huge investment and maybe MSP should really start to pay attention and appreciate what's being spent here to do so. An average vendor, a small vendor that wants to be involved in the shows, and if we're talking maybe 10 shows in a year, maybe 10, we'll say, they're spending anywhere up to almost $500,000 in some cases just for 10
Hmm. Yeah.
before they even bought you your first drink. And they're doing that, of course, selfishly motivated to grow their business, but they're doing it because they know they have to maintain relationships with you, to hear your voices, to start doing business in general. So they're actually putting their face on, and they're coming out and they're doing it, and not to mention how much time they take away from their families to do this too, because startups, it's usually them. You're the founder, you're the salesperson, you're the marketing person, you're the fulfillment person, God knows what else you're doing, right? You got to go to all the shows. So, and you and I have had our extent, we've had our time of travel. We still do it, but like, think about that. Like, you're on the road. Even if you do 10 shows, guaranteed you're on the road for at least 12 weeks. When you calculate everything, depending on where these shows are, God forbid you're going overseas, add on another week of just nonsense, right? And you're leaving your families. And people should appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. We've both done it. And it is necessary because you need to have that time with people. Although, and this could be a
Oh,
whole
God,
nother
yes.
discussion, because you and I have both done our fair share of trade shows and we've seen how it's evolved over the years, both in formats as well as cost. And I think that we're coming up on, I think there's going to be a point in the next year or two where a lot of shows have to change or they're going to start declining a lot in participation. Now,
Agreed.
I think, one of the reasons why I love IT Nation is that to me, it has always been the most agnostic of the big
Yes.
shows. And, you talked about ecosystem today, and it's true because it's more than just vendors having an opportunity to get in front of the partners. There's so many other things going on. There's been a lot more educational
Mm-hmm.
content that I
The
saw come in
expectations
this
set.
year, and a lot more. This is what we're doing for the entire ecosystem, not just ConnectWise. And I really appreciate that they haven't lost, that
Yep.
view that they really need to try and be that trade show for the industry. And I think others might follow suit. I don't know, but IT Nation certainly has the reputation and the history of being that type of
I
show.
would agree. Again, I came in from the outside in, right? I was sponsoring the events. IT Nation was one of my favorite shows to sponsor. I told you that years ago because I knew at the end of the year, I was going to cap off with tons of business. I knew I was going to get The showroom floor has always been great for me. I generate tons of leads. I was doing everything that was great for me. It really was. And it's been reinforced even more so from last year when we announced the community of communities concept. It already existed anyway. We just never put a name on it, if you think about it. But then started to bring all of you guys in, bringing in the communities like Detective Generates and ASCII and all of them, and saying, here's free space for you all to operate, and we're going to give you exposure. You don't got to give us anything. Bring your friends. Basically, that's it, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for you guys to bring your people to this because it's a great experience. People come for three main reasons. They come to be educated. So good content is so important, right? The second reason they come is because they want to be able to network. And third, which everybody disagrees with me when I say it, but they want to be entertained. And it is entertaining. There's a party, there's a concert, there's a whatever. It doesn't matter. For some of these men and women, this is their vacation they take sometimes for the year.
Yep. Been there, done that.
Yes, exactly.
Have several T-shirts from when I was an MSP. That was vacation every year. So, Sean, thank you so much for joining me today and providing this update and a little bit of reflection on IT Nation and PitchIT for 2024. And we look forward to the announcements that are going to come hopefully soon for PitchIT 2025.
Yes.
And I've got to start thinking about what I'm going to do in terms of a game show theme for this year.
I'm excited to see what you do come up with. Keep in mind that we're just a couple weeks away from the application enrollment period being open for PitchIT. It'll kick off 1st of February. There will be a press release that will come out in the next couple weeks about it, just to let everybody know it's happening. So honestly, if you're a vendor and you're curious, I guess the good thing now is they can take a look back at all of your guys' stuff you created to know if PitchIt's for them, and then they can apply. We are only accepting 26 again this year. We have a lot more to apply. So I suggest you apply though, and you take it serious when you go through the application process, and know that we will source you all out to make sure you're a good fit.
Yeah, because this is no joke. This is an actual program. It's not just a competition. Correct. It is a program that you get so much value out of.
We estimated that we average as a team internally, we average about 12 hours a week for 5 months. That's applied to just them alone, not to everything else, but just to the vendors alone as a team. And that's not counting the hours of the Cameo coaches and stuff. That's literally for me and my team.
Well, we are looking forward to it, sir.
I'm excited. I get excited about this. So yeah, I can't wait.
All right. And as soon as those announcements are out, we will have some more news here on All Things MSP. And yeah, if you're a vendor, definitely check it out.